Hello, good evening, Regina. How you doing today? So welcome to the third session, Regina, of this class, Evaluación de las Habilidades Lingüísticas 1. So here we got a little introduction about this session that says that assessment plays a crucial role in language learning as it provides insight into students' progress, strengths, and areas for improvement. Effective assessment should go beyond merely assigning grades. They should foster learning and encourage meaningful language use. To achieve this, assessment must be designed based on key principles that ensure fairness, accuracy, and practicality. The fundamental principles of assessment, as outlined by Brown and Abe-Wickrama in the 2010, include validity, reliability, authenticity, interactivity, impact, practicality, and washback. Let me tell you that that's gonna be the topics that we're gonna discuss. That most of these principles we're gonna talk about it, okay? And each principle contributes to the overall effectiveness of an assessment, ensuring that it accurately measures language proficiency, engages students in realistic tasks, and positively influences the teaching learning process. By understanding and applying these principles, educators can create assessment that not only evaluate language skills, but also enhance learners' motivation and communicative competence. Let's move on to next slide, which is related to the topic. As I told you in the previous slide, so we're gonna talk about the principles of language assessment and how to introduce vocabulary, okay? So let's see our objectives for this session. Design and implement effective language assessment based on key assessment principles to ensure validity, reliability, authenticity, interactivity, practicality, and positive washback, promoting meaningful language learning. As usually, and you know it, so I would like to start with a speaking section, and I would like to listen to you. What do you think about these ones? So we got some questions there. And the first one says, how do you feel when you take an English test and why? Let me tell you, let me answer that question by my own experience. When I was studying English major at UNAM, I I used to feel nervous because I didn't know if I was going to remember everything that I studied. You know, that was one of the point that I felt nervous at that time. What about you? Okay, very good. Let's see the second questions. What makes a language test difficult or easy for you? So let me tell you that a test can be difficult or is difficult when it includes vocabulary or grammar structures that we haven't studied, right? But if the test reflects what we practiced and includes real life tasks, it becomes easier, okay? Now let's move on to the third one. Do you prefer oral or written tests and why? So let me give you an example about this. In my case, I would prefer oral tests. Do you know why? Because they allowed me to express myself freely. Written tests can be stressful because I worry too much about grammar and spelling. So that could be an example, okay? Let's move on to next question. If you were a teacher, how would you design an English test to make it both fair and useful? In my case, I'm gonna give you my opinion as an English teacher. I would include a variety of tasks like multiple choice questions for grammar and an open-ended speaking or writing task. And in this way, a student can show their real abilities instead of just memorizing rules, you know? So you have to look for some of the types of tasks that you can use, especially for those, for the language skill that you want to develop, okay? So let's see, next question. What do you think makes an English test valid? Can you give an example? Okay, let's say this, that a valid test measures what it's supposed to measure, right? For example, if a test is designed to assess speaking skills, it should include an oral task, not just a written grammar exercises, okay? So you have to look for the most suitable tasks for each language skills, okay? To be valid, okay? Good. Let's see next question. How can we make language assessment more authentic? Can you think of a real life task that could be used in a test? Well, let me tell you that we can make tests more authentic by using real life situations. For example, instead of asking a student to fill in the blanks with preposition, we could ask them to give directions to a tourist in English. It's more practical, okay? Yeah, that would be a real life task, a real life situation. What about this question? Why is reliability important in an assessment? Have you ever taken a test that gave inconsistent results? As you know, reliability ensures that a test produces the same results under similar conditions. Okay. I mean, let's suppose that you're going to test two groups. Okay. Group A and Group B. So the most important when we talk about the principles of assessment, reliability, this is refers to the consistency of the measurements, okay? So you expect to get the same results in both groups. What about this question? Do you think tests should have a positive or negative impact on students? How can teachers ensure a positive effect? What do you think about it? Well, as you know, tests should have a positive impact by encouraging learning, okay? And teacher can ensure this by designing assessments that reflect real communication skills instead of just memorizations, especially when you're practicing, you want to enhance, you want to improve, you want to develop speaking skills, okay, oral communication. So you have to reflect real communication skills, not memorizations. And what about the last question? Have you ever changed the way you studied because of the way a test was designed? Was the washback positive or negative? For example, let me provide an example about this. I remember that when I was in high school, most of the students had only multiple choice grammar tests. So in my case, I focused on memorizing rules instead of practicing speaking. So this was negative washback for me because I didn't develop real communication skills. You know, I was only practicing multiple choice grammar tests. Do you think that practicing this you can develop communication skills? Of course not, right? Okay, very good. Let's move on to next slide. Here, we got the principles of language assessment, as I was mentioning in the introduction of the session, okay? So we have reliability, interactivity, validity, practicality, authenticity, and washback. So what do you think that reliability is? As I told you in the previous slide, that reliability refers to the consistency of the measurement, okay? I mean, let's suppose that the same example I'm gonna give you. Let's suppose that you want to test a group, right? So the group A and the group B. So you're expecting to have the same result. If group one got the 90%, the group B got the 90%. That is the consistency of measurement, okay? So what does it mean? That the evaluation, the test that you designed was reliable, okay? That makes sense? What about the interactivity? What do you understand for that? As you know, interactivity refers to the degree to which a test engages a student in meaningful cognitive and communicative processes, okay? So we need to include both. What about validity? Let me tell you that validity refers to whether a test actually measures what it's supposed to measure, okay? For example, if an assessment is meant to evaluate speaking skills, a valid test would include an oral task, because you want to evaluate communication skills, such as a role played or an interview, rather than a multiple choice grammar test, okay? So that is valid, okay? In that case, the kind of test is valid. What about practicality? In this case, practicality refers to a practical task is feasible in terms of time, resources, and ease of administration. Let's suppose that you design a test, okay, and you want to prove if that test is practical or not. So you applied the test to a group of 20 students, and the test is compounded by, let's suppose, 10 pages, right? So, and you said, okay, folks, you're gonna do these tests of 10 pages and you only got 10 minutes. Do you think that that test was practical? Of course not, right? Because you're not providing the the proper time, the right time for doing that kind of test. So in that case, it's not practical, okay? What about authenticity? You know that authenticity means that a test reflects real world language use. Let's see an example. Instead of asking students to complete isolated vocabulary exercises, an authentic written test could require them to draft a formal email or engage in a real life dialogue, okay? For example, asking for directions in a society, in a city, right? And let's see that the last one, washback. Have you ever heard about it, this before? Well, washback refers to the effect, right, that testing has on teaching and learning. In this one, the washback can be positive, especially when it encourages meaningful learning, and can be negative when leads to teaching to the test, right? Well, negative washback leads to teaching to the test, right? So the washback can be positive or negative, okay? It could be similar like feedback, okay? Let's move on to next slide. Here, now we're gonna see how to introduce new vocabulary. There are three important things that we must take into account when introducing new vocabulary, and they are meaning, use, and form. So, but when we say mean, what is that? So meaning, what does the word mean? Okay. Use, how and when the word is used. And the form is how is the word structured, okay? So let's see an example. You got some questions so far? Okay, good. Let's see an example. What about the word of frustration? What about the meaning of the word? So what does frustration stand for? So we can say that frustration is a feeling of being upset, right? Or annoyed because something is difficult. That could be the meaning. Okay, let's see an example using the word frustration. Learning a new language can cause frustration sometimes. Why? Because it's difficult for that person to learn the language. So we can include in the meaning the synonym. Frustration can be synonym of disappointment, irritation, and the antonym, satisfaction, relief, right? But that is in terms of meaning, on the meaning. What about in terms of use? It says that use is how and when the word is used. So the word frustrations can be used in collocations, right? Feel frustration, express frustration, frustration over about something, right? Let's see an example. I felt frustration when I couldn't understand the instructions. What do you think? It's the register for this word. It's neutral, right? It's neutral. Why? Because it can be used in both spoken and written English. And we can also use the grammar here. You know that we got the purpose, the frustration as word plus the preposition, okay? What about the form? As I told you before, the form is how the word is structured. Some important aspects that we must take into account in the form is the pronunciation of the word, okay? The right pronunciation of the word. So we need to know the phonetic symbols that compound such word. And here we have to identify the grammatical category, okay, that word has. Or, as you know, part of speech, frustration. Now I ask you, frustration, do you think is a verb, is a noun, is an adjective, is a, sorry, is an adverb? What do you think it is? Yeah, frustration is a noun, okay? Frustration is a noun. So here in the form, we can also include the word family, okay? Or some people says word formation. Okay, we got the word frustration. So if we talk about the word formation or word family, we know that the word frustration is a noun. What is the verb of the same word? Frustrate, okay? Frustrate. Do we have an adjective as a word family of the same word? Yes, that is frustrated, right? Frustrated. For example, she looked frustrated. We can also use as an adjective by adding ing, frustrating. Let's see, the experience was frustrating. So we use the ed when you got the feeling, right? And ing when something is provoking that feeling. Do we have an adverb as a word family for the same word or not? Yes, we got one. Frustratingly, okay? For example, the application was frustratingly slowed, okay? So those things you must take into account when introducing vocabulary, okay? Don't forget that. You need to be focused on the meaning. I mean, what does the word mean? You must to be focused on the use, how and when is the word used, and on the form, how the word is structured, okay? Let's see another example. So we got the word encourage. What do you think about that word, encourage? Mhm. Yes, talking about the meaning, you know that encourage is to give someone confidence, right? Support or motivation to do something. For example, my parents always encourage me to follow my dreams. So we can find some synonym like motivate and inspire. But what about the antonym? We can say discourage or demotivate. But those are in terms of the meaning, right? What about in terms of how and when the word is used? As a collocation, we can use encourage someone to do something, right? For example, my teacher encouraged me to read more books. So in this one, it's similar to the first one regarding to the register because it is neutral. It can be used in both formal and informal situations. What about the grammar? So we have encourage plus the object plus the infinitive. She encouraged me to apply for the job. Okay, applying the same rule about grammar. What about how the word is structured, about the form? What was the key word that I mentioned at the beginning with this with the first word of frustration? It was pronunciation, okay? Something important. In the form, in terms of form, so we must be focused on pronunciation. So we got some phonetic symbols, right? Encourage. And it is stressed on the second syllable, okay? So what about the grammatical categories? It's a verb, right? Encourage is a verb. So let's try to find the word family or word formation. So we have the verb, okay? Encourage. My teacher encouraged me, okay? To read more books. That is an example using encourage as a verb. What about noun? Can we form a noun using the same root of the word? What do you think? Yes, we can use a noun, and is by adding the suffix meant, right? Encouragement. Let's see an example. I received a lot of encouragement. There, we got the same root of the word with an inflectional affix, meant, okay? Can we form an adjective? Yes, we can by adding ing, encouraging. Let's see an example. Her words were very encouraging. In that case, encouraging is working as an adjective. What about the verb? What about the verb? Sorry, the adverb. Yeah, we got one. Encouragingly. Let's see an example. He spoke encouragingly. Okay. So as you could see there, listen to this word. So when we talk about the form, we can find, okay, we can analyze the word family or word formation as you want to name it. Okay. So you got some questions? I would like to listen to you using the word arch. How would you explain? How would you introduce the word arch in terms of meaning, use, and form? How would you do it? How would you test? How would you teach such word? Okay, practice that. And if you don't have any questions, let me tell you that that will be all for this session. Okay. And if you got some doubts, don't forget to ask me by WhatsApp. And in the session number 3, you will find the whole document, okay, the whole information related to these things that I was explaining to. Okay, so try to read, try to analyze, put into practice, try to look for some words, because remember that you have a task, you have a video as a complementary, okay, information that you have to watch first and then proceed to do your assignments. Okay, so if you don't have any questions, so we're gonna finish here today. Okay, bye bye.